The morning shift bell rang across Unity Prime, and Commander Jake Morrison walked through the gleaming corridors of the station that orbited between galaxies. He had been doing this for 5 years now, representing Earth's military interests alongside 15 other species that made up the Galactic Council. The walls were transparent in places, showing the swirling colors of deep space beyond, and Jake never got tired of the view. He stopped at the medical bay where Dr. Lisa Chen was working. She stood over a holographic display, her fingers moving through the air as she adjusted formulas that only she seemed to understand. Lisa had brought human medical technology to the Council 3 years ago, and it had saved millions of lives across dozens of worlds. The Valthene, an insectoid species with delicate bodies, particularly benefited from her work. "How's the new treatment coming?" Jake asked. Lisa looked up and smiled. "Almost ready. The Karathi asked for help with their energy stabilization issues. I think I found a solution." The Karathi were beings made of pure energy, beautiful and strange, and they had become good friends to humanity. Jake nodded. Humans always seemed to be helping someone. That was just how Earth operated. When they joined the Council 37 years ago, humanity had been excited and hopeful. Finally, they were part of something bigger. They shared everything they had: technology, art, medicine, and military protection. In return, other species shared their knowledge too, and everyone benefited. Or so it seemed. Ambassador Ryan Foster was in a council meeting when Jake arrived at the main chamber. Ryan stood at the human podium, his voice calm and measured as he discussed trade routes with the other representatives. Jake watched from the observation deck. Ryan had been Earth's voice for 10 years, and he was good at his job. He believed in the Council, believed that different species could work together for the common good. But Jake had started noticing things. Small things at first. The way the Dravix Empire representatives looked at humans. The way they smiled when Ryan spoke, like adults watching a child try to explain something. The Dravix were reptilian, tall and covered in dark green scales. They were the oldest members of the Council, and they never let anyone forget it. Later that day, Captain Emma Rodriguez contacted Jake from her ship. Her face appeared on his screen, and she looked worried. "Jake, we have a problem," Emma said. "Raiders are attacking the Outer Rim colonies. 3 human settlements have been hit in the last week." "How bad?" Jake asked. "Bad. They're targeting civilian populations. The Council is calling an emergency session tomorrow." The emergency session lasted for hours. Representatives from all 16 species gathered in the main chamber. The Dravix counselor, a massive reptile named Zexathor, spoke first. His voice was deep and rumbling. "These attacks threaten us all," Zexathor said. "We must respond with force. I propose a joint military task force." The other species agreed. Then came the discussion of who would contribute what. The Dravix would send 20 ships, the Valthene would send medical support, the Karathi would provide energy shields. When it came to humanity's turn, Zexathor looked directly at Ryan. "Earth will contribute 40% of the military forces," Zexathor said. It wasn't a question. Ryan hesitated. 40%? We're one of the smaller members, surely a more balanced approach. Humanity has the most mobile fleet, Zexathor interrupted. And your people are enthusiastic about combat. It makes sense. Jake watched from his seat. 40%. That meant humans would be doing almost half the fighting, suffering almost half the casualties, while being just one of 16 species. But Ryan looked around the chamber and saw expectant faces. The colonies needed help. People were dying. "Earth agrees," Ryan said quietly. The campaign lasted 6 months. Jake led ground forces on 4 different worlds. Emma commanded the space battles. Human soldiers fought bravely, died bravely, and slowly pushed the raiders back. The other species helped, but Jake noticed something troubling. During the worst battles, The Dravik ships always seemed to be somewhere else, engaged in tactical positioning, while humans took the heavy fire. One night, Jake sat in his quarters and looked at the casualty reports. 2,300 human soldiers dead, 5,000 wounded. The Dravik's losses, 200. Jake wasn't good at politics, but he was good at math, and these numbers didn't make sense. Dr. Lisa Chen noticed problems too. She had shared her research freely with the council, uploading it to their shared database so everyone could benefit. But lately, she saw her own work being published by other species, with their names on it instead of hers. When she raised the issue with the council's research committee, they told her she was mistaken, that the similarities were just coincidence. Emma noticed the supply problems. Shipments meant for human forces kept getting delayed or rerouted. Medicine that her ships desperately needed somehow ended up in Dravik's warehouses. When she complained, she was told there were logistical challenges, nothing personal, but it felt personal. The raiders were finally defeated. The Joint Task Force returned to Unity Prime as heroes. There was a celebration in the main hall with food and drinks from a dozen different worlds. Jake stood next to Lisa and Emma, and they watched the other species congratulate each other. Counselor Zexthor gave a speech. He talked about unity and cooperation. He mentioned every species by name, praising their contributions. He mentioned humanity last, almost as an afterthought. And his words were brief. And of course, the humans did their part as well. Ryan stood at the back of the hall, his jaw tight. He had given 10 years to this council. Earth had given everything it had. And this was the thanks they received. Jake leaned close to Lisa. Something's wrong here. I know, Lisa whispered back. I've known for a while. The celebration continued, but the three humans left early. They walked through the empty corridors of Unity Prime, and none of them spoke. There was nothing to say yet, but something had shifted. Some invisible line had been crossed. Tomorrow, the council would meet again to discuss rebuilding the colonies. Tomorrow, they would talk about who would pay for repairs and reparations. Jake had a feeling that tomorrow was going to be a very bad day. He was right. The council chamber was full when Ryan Foster walked in. He carried a data tablet under his arm and tried to keep his expression neutral. The Draviks had called this special session to discuss reparations for the Outer Rim colonies that had been damaged during the raider attacks. Ryan had spent the last 3 days reviewing the numbers, and he didn't like what he found. Counselor Zexthor stood at the center podium, his scales gleaming under the chamber lights. He waited until everyone was seated, then began his presentation. Images appeared on the massive screen behind him, showing destroyed buildings and damaged infrastructure. The cost of rebuilding is substantial, Zexthor said. We must all contribute according to our capacity. I have prepared a fair distribution plan. The formula appeared on the screen. Ryan stared at it, then stared again. According to Zexthor's calculation, Earth would pay 70% of all rebuilding costs. 70%. The room was silent. Ryan stood up slowly. Counselor, there must be an error in your calculations. Zexthor's eyes, cold and yellow, fixed on Ryan. There is no error, Ambassador Foster. The formula accounts for industrial capacity, resource availability, and economic strength. Earth simply has more than most other members. Earth also lost more soldiers than anyone else, Ryan said, his voice rising. We suffered 2,300 casualties. The Draviks lost 200. We fought harder, bled more, and now you want us to pay the most? A murmur went through the chamber. The Valthene representative, a gentle being named Kixta, clicked her mandibles in distress. The Karathi flickered in their containment field, their energy patterns showing agitation. But the other species stayed quiet. Zexthor didn't seem bothered. Human casualties are regrettable, but they reflect tactical choices made by human commanders. The Draviks cannot be blamed for humanity's aggressive fighting style. Jake Morrison, watching from the military gallery, felt his hands clench into fists. Aggressive fighting style? The Dravik's fleet had abandoned human forces 3 times during critical battles. Jake had the communication logs to prove it. He had sent them to Ryan last night. Ryan pulled out his tablet. I have evidence that the Dravik's fleet command deliberately withheld support during key engagements. I also have intelligence reports suggesting that the Dravik's knew about the raider attacks before they happened. In fact, there are communications that indicate— Enough! Zexthor's voice boomed through the chamber. These are wild accusations without merit. The human delegation is simply upset about the cost of rebuilding. This is understandable but unacceptable. The council will vote on the distribution plan now. The chairwoman, a Dravik's ally named Talreth, nodded. All in favor of the proposed distribution plan? Hands, claws, and appendages rose across the chamber. Ryan counted them. 14 votes in favor. Only the Valthine and Karathi voted against it, standing with humanity. Ryan stood frozen. They had actually done it. The council had voted to make Earth carry the burden while ignoring all evidence of wrongdoing. The measure passes, Talreth announced. Earth will comply with the payment schedule or face economic sanctions. Ryan looked around the chamber one more time. He saw species that humanity had helped, had saved, had fought beside. They wouldn't meet his eyes. I request a formal investigation into the Dravik's fleet's conduct during the campaign, Ryan said. Zexthor laughed. It was a harsh, croaking sound. Request denied. The human delegation displays the emotional weakness we have long suspected. Perhaps this is what happens when you let a young species join too early. They think everyone owes them something just for showing up. Some of the other representatives laughed, too. Not all of them, but enough. Ryan felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger. Worse than anger. Disappointment. He walked out of the chamber without another word. Jake and Emma met him in the hallway outside, and Lisa was there, too. She had left her laboratory when she heard what was happening. They set us up, Lisa said quietly. I've been going through my research files. 6 of my major projects were copied from the shared database before publication. They're being sold under other names. The patent office won't investigate because those species have council seniority. Emma pulled up a report on her own tablet. Supply diversions weren't accidents. I have shipping manifests showing that our medical supplies were deliberately redirected to Dravik's military warehouses. They sold our own medicine back to us at marked-up prices during the campaign, Jake added his evidence. The Dravik's fleet commander received orders directly from Counselor Zexthor to avoid heavy engagement. They wanted us to take casualties. They wanted to weaken us. Ryan leaned against the wall. All these years, all the hope, the effort, the sacrifice. And this was what it came to. A young human diplomat named Ben Harris approached them. He was new to Unity Prime, only been there 6 months. He looked at the 4 of them and asked a simple question. Why do we stay? The words hung in the air. Why did they stay? What were they getting from this relationship except exploitation and mockery? We made commitments, Ryan said, but his voice lacked conviction. To people who don't respect us, Ben pressed. To people who steal from us? Who let our soldiers die unnecessarily? Lisa looked at Ryan. He's right. We keep giving and giving, and they keep taking and taking. When does it stop? Emma's eyes were hard. My crews are exhausted. Morale is at an all-time low. They're asking me why they're risking their lives for a council that treats them like second-class members. Ryan closed his eyes. He thought about all the speeches he had given about unity and cooperation. He thought about how naive he had been. The council didn't want partners. They wanted servants. We need to talk to Earth, Ryan said finally. We need to tell the president everything. They set up a secure communication link that night. President Nicole Wright appeared on the screen, her face serious. She was in the Oval Office, and it was early morning in Washington. Ryan, Jake, Lisa, Emma, and Ben sat in the human delegation's private meeting room, and for 3 hours they told her everything. President Wright listened to it all. The exploitation, the theft, the betrayal, the mockery. When they finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "What do you recommend?" she asked. Ryan looked at the others. He thought about the question Ben had asked. "Why do we stay?" "I think," Ryan said slowly, "that we should consider withdrawal from the council." President Wright nodded. "Give me 72 hours. Don't do anything that would alert the council. Just act normal. I need to consult with Congress and the military chiefs." The screen went dark. The 5 humans sat in silence. Had they really just suggested leaving the Galactic Council? It seemed impossible. It seemed insane. But it also seemed right. Jake stood up. "If we're really going to do this, we need to be smart about it. We can't just storm out. They'll impose sanctions, maybe even use military force." Lisa nodded. "We need to prepare. Quietly." Emma smiled. And it wasn't a nice smile. "They want to treat us like we're nothing? Let's show them what nothing looks like." Ben, the youngest of them, looked almost excited. "A silent departure." Ryan felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not hope for the council, but hope for humanity's future outside of it. "Let's wait for the president's decision," he said. "But yes, if we go quietly. We don't give them the satisfaction of a fight." Outside the window, Unity Prime continued its slow orbit. The station was beautiful, a marvel of cooperative engineering. But beauty didn't matter if the foundation was built on disrespect and exploitation. 72 hours, Ryan thought. 3 days to decide humanity's future. President Nicole Wright's face appeared on the screen exactly 72 hours later. Ryan Foster sat in the secure conference room with Jake Morrison, Lisa Chen, Emma Rodriguez, and Ben Harris. They had barely slept for 3 days, waiting for this moment. "Congress has voted," President Wright said. "By a margin of 78 to 22, they support withdrawal from the Galactic Council. The Joint Chiefs are unanimous. The people are tired of seeing our soldiers die for aliens who don't appreciate the sacrifice. We're done." Ryan felt a weight lift from his shoulders and settle somewhere else. They were really doing this. "However," the president continued, "we're not going to do this the way they expect. No angry speeches, no dramatic exits. We're going to leave so quietly that they won't know we're gone until it's too late to stop us." Jake leaned forward. "What's the plan?" "I'm authorizing Operation Silent Departure," President Wright said. "You have 60 days to extract every human asset from Council space without alerting them to what's happening. Can you do it?" Lisa pulled up a holographic display showing Unity Prime systems. "Most of the station's critical infrastructure runs on human code. Life support, communications, defensive grids. I can install fail-safes that will trigger after we're gone." "Not malicious," Ryan said quickly. "We're not trying to hurt them." "No," Lisa agreed. "Just inconvenient. The systems will still work, but they'll need to figure out how to maintain them without us. It'll take them months to relearn what we did in days." Emma brought up fleet positions. "I have 47 ships in Council space. I can rotate them out over the next 2 months under the guise of standard crew rotation and maintenance schedules. No one will question it." Jake nodded. "We have about 800 military personnel on Unity Prime and surrounding stations. I can send them home in small groups. Training exercises, family emergencies, medical leaves. Spread it out so it doesn't look suspicious." Ben pulled up civilian data. "There are about 3,000 human civilians on Unity Prime. Researchers, traders, teachers, families. We need to get them out too, but carefully. If thousands of humans suddenly book passage home, the council will notice." They spent the next 6 hours planning every detail. How many people could leave each week without raising alarms? Which systems Lisa could safely disable? How Emma could redeploy her fleet without triggering security concerns. It was like planning a magic trick, Ryan thought. The secret was misdirection. The next morning, Ryan attended a routine council session. Counselor Zexthor was discussing the payment schedule for the rebuilding effort. Ryan sat in his chair and took notes, like always. He asked a few procedural questions. He was polite and professional. Inside, he was counting down. 59 days left. Lisa began her work that afternoon. She went through every line of code that humans had contributed to Unity Prime's systems. The defensive grid that protected the core worlds from pirate attacks. The communication network that allowed instant translation between species. The medical database that saved lives across the galaxy. She didn't delete anything. That would be cruel. But she encrypted it, locked it behind passwords that only humans knew, and set timers. When the timers run out, she explained to Ryan, the systems will ask for authentication codes. Without them, the systems will default to basic functions only. Everything will still work, just not well. They'll have to rebuild it themselves. How long will the timers last? Ryan asked. 62 days, Lisa said with a small smile. We'll be gone by then. Emma started rotating her ships. The destroyer Courage left for Earth, officially scheduled for reactor maintenance. The frigate Liberty followed 3 days later, crew rotation. The carrier Independence departed next week, supply run. One by one, 47 ships found reasons to go home. The Council's traffic control didn't question it. Why would they? The humans had been so reliable for 37 years. Jake organized the military withdrawal. Lieutenant Sarah Kim got called home for her mother's surgery. Captain Danny Cruz needed emergency leave for a family matter. Sergeant Amy Lopez was reassigned for advanced training. 800 personnel, leaving in groups of 10 or 15. Spread over 2 months, it was barely noticeable. The civilian extraction was harder. Ben Harris personally contacted every human on Unity Prime. Some were easy to convince. The teachers and researchers who had felt the disrespect firsthand were ready to leave immediately. Others needed more persuasion. But I've built a life here, one trader named Gary Mitchell protested. My business, my friends. The Council doesn't respect us, Ben said gently. They exploit us. We're giving everyone the choice to come home with dignity or stay and continue being treated as lesser. It's your decision. Gary thought about it for 2 days, then booked passage on a commercial transport. So did most of the others. The Valthene observer Kixta noticed something was wrong 3 weeks into the operation. She approached Ryan after a council session. Ambassador Foster, I observe a trend. She clicked softly. Many humans are departing Unity Prime. Is there a reason? Ryan had prepared for this. You know how it is, Kixta. After the campaign, people want to see their families. We've been through a lot. Some personal time seems appropriate. Kixta's compound eyes studied him. I hope this is truly the reason. The Valthene value our friendship with humanity. We value it too, Ryan said, and that was true. The Valthene had voted against the unfair payment plan. They had stood with humanity when others wouldn't. The Valthene have always treated us with respect. Kixta seemed satisfied with that answer, but Ryan felt guilty lying to her. Still, if word got out early, the Draviks might try to stop the withdrawal. Everything depended on secrecy. 40 days left. 30 days. 20 days. Ryan watched Unity Prime slowly empty of human presence. The restaurants run by Earth chefs closed down. The human quarter of the station grew quiet. In the council sessions, Ryan continued to play his role. He argued about procedure. He filed bureaucratic complaints. He acted like a man who expected to be there for years to come. Dr. Lisa Chen finished encrypting the last major system. Captain Emma Rodriguez confirmed that only 12 ships remained in council space, and they would leave in the final week. Commander Jake Morrison reported that fewer than 100 military personnel were still stationed on Unity Prime, and they would be on the last transport out. 10 days before departure, President Wright contacted them again. "How are we doing?" "On schedule," Ryan reported. "The Council suspects nothing. We've been boring them with procedural complaints for weeks. They think we're just being difficult about the payment terms." "Any problems?" "The Valthine are suspicious," Ryan admitted, "but they won't interfere. They're good people." "And the Karathi?" "They've been quiet," Emma said. "But I think they know something is happening. Their ambassador looked at me strangely yesterday." President Wright nodded. 5 days from now, the Council is having a special session to publicly demand Earth's first payment. That's when you'll make your statement, Ryan. Brief, dignified, then leave. Everyone else should be gone by then. Ryan felt his heart beat faster. 5 days. After all these years, it came down to 5 days. The final week was tense. Every remaining human knew they were walking a tightrope. One wrong word, one suspicious action, and the Council might try to stop them. But they had come too far to fail now. On the last day, Ryan woke up early. He put on his formal ambassador uniform one final time. He looked at himself in the mirror. 10 years he had worn this uniform with pride. 10 years of believing in cooperation and unity. He still believed in those things. He just didn't believe the Council understood them. Jake, Lisa, Emma, and Ben met him outside the Council chamber. They were the last 5 humans on Unity Prime. Everyone else was gone, safely back in Earth-controlled space. "Ready?" Emma asked. Ryan took a deep breath. "Ready?" They walked into the Council chamber together. It was time to say goodbye. The Council chamber was full that morning. Every species had sent their representatives to witness what Counselor Zexthor was calling the education of humanity. Ryan Foster walked to the human podium for the last time, and Jake Morrison, Lisa Chen, Emma Rodriguez, and Ben Harris took their seats in the gallery behind him. Zexthor stood at the center platform, his reptilian features smug with satisfaction. He had prepared a speech, Ryan knew. A long speech about responsibility and obligation and knowing one's place in the galactic order. "We gather today," Zexthor began, "to discuss a matter of great importance. The human delegation has been delaying payment for the Outer Rim reconstruction. This delay is unacceptable. Earth has obligations to the Council." He went on for 20 minutes. His voice boomed through the chamber, dramatic and self-important. He talked about the generosity of the Council in accepting humanity. He mentioned the opportunities Earth had been given. He never mentioned the stolen research. He never mentioned the abandoned battles. He never mentioned the unfair payment formula. "Some species," Zexthor said, his eyes fixed on Ryan, "join the Council thinking they are owed something simply for existing. They contribute what is expected and demand praise. They fight when asked and expect special treatment. This is the behavior of children, not equals." A few representatives laughed. Not all, but enough to sting. Ryan kept his face neutral. Jake sat behind him, hands gripped tight on his armrests, but he stayed quiet. They all stayed quiet. Let Zexthor have his moment. It would be his last. "Earth will make its first payment within 30 days, Zexthor declared. "This is not negotiable. The Council has been patient, but patience has limits. If humanity refuses, sanctions will be imposed, trade restrictions, travel limitations, military access denied. Do you understand, Ambassador Foster?" Ryan stood slowly. He looked around the chamber at all the representatives he had worked with for 10 years. The Draviks who had exploited them, the species who had stolen their research, the ones who had voted to burden Earth unfairly. He also saw Kixta the Valthine, who looked worried. He saw the Karathi representative, whose energy field pulsed with what might have been sadness. "I understand perfectly, Counselor," Ryan said. His voice was calm, almost conversational. You've made everything very clear. Zexthor smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Good. Then we can proceed with... However, Ryan continued, I must inform the Council of a decision Earth has made. The chamber grew quiet. Something in Ryan's tone made them listen. 37 years ago, Ryan said, humanity joined the Galactic Council with hope and excitement. We believed in cooperation between species. We believed in sharing knowledge and protecting each other. We gave everything we had to this council. Our technology, our medicine, our military, our lives. He paused, letting the words settle. In return, we received exploitation. Our research was stolen and patented under other names. Our supplies were diverted and sold back to us at inflated prices. Our soldiers were abandoned in battle to increase our casualties. And now, after sacrificing more than any other species, we are told to pay 70% of the rebuilding costs while being mocked as children who don't understand their place. Zexthor's smile faded. Ambassador Foster, I'm not finished, Ryan said quietly, but with enough force that Zexthor actually stopped talking. The United Terran Alliance hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. We came in friendship, we offered our best. In return, we received contempt and dishonesty. We choose to walk away with dignity rather than remain where we are not valued. This session is the last you will see of humanity. We wish you well in your future endeavors. Goodbye. For 3 seconds, the chamber was absolutely silent. Then it erupted. You cannot simply leave, Zexthor roared. There are procedures. There are obligations. Ryan picked up his tablet and walked toward the exit. Jake, Lisa, Emma, and Ben followed him. Behind them, the chamber descended into chaos. Representatives were shouting. The chairwoman was banging her gavel, trying to restore order. Zexthor was demanding that the exits be sealed. But Ryan and his team were already gone. They walked quickly through the corridors of Unity Prime. Alert sirens started blaring. The Council security forces were probably being mobilized, but Ryan doubted they would actually try to stop them. This wasn't a war. It was a divorce. At the docking bay, a single transport ship waited. The last human vessel on Unity Prime. The pilot, a woman named Kate Sullivan, had the engines already running. Everyone accounted for? Kate asked as they boarded. Everyone, Emma confirmed. We're the last ones. The transport detached from the docking bay and moved away from Unity Prime. Through the viewports, Ryan watched the massive station shrink into the distance. He felt no anger, no satisfaction, just a quiet sense of relief. Incoming message from the Council, Kate announced. Audio only. Put it through, Ryan said. Zexthor's voice filled the cabin, furious and disbelieving. Foster, you are making a grave mistake. Earth needs the Council. You will face sanctions. You will face economic collapse. Return immediately, and we may show leniency. Ryan didn't respond. He just watched Unity Prime disappear. They're trying to hail our other ships, Emma said, checking her displays. All 47 vessels are ignoring the calls and proceeding to Earth. Lisa pulled up a status screen. The system failsafes are activating now. In about 10 minutes, Unity Prime is going to experience cascading technical failures. As if on cue, the lights on Unity Prime began flickering. The defensive grid, which had protected the Council's core worlds from pirate attacks for 30 years, went offline. Communication networks started experiencing errors. Life support remained functional, but temperature controls stopped working properly. It's not permanent, Lisa said softly. They can fix everything, but it'll take them months to figure out how we did it. And without the instruction manuals which we took with us, they'll have to learn from scratch. Ben was monitoring the civilian channels. Human traders are leaving Council space, thousands of ships. They heard about our withdrawal and they're following us out. Emma pulled up tactical displays. The Outer Rim colonies have lost their defensive coverage. The systems we installed are offline now. They're vulnerable again. That's their problem now, Jake said, but he didn't sound happy about it, just tired. The transport passed through the jump gate that marked the boundary of Council space. On the other side was human territory, free territory, home. Ryan finally allowed himself to relax. They had done it. They had walked away cleanly, quietly, with no violence and no drama. They had simply left. And now the Council would have to figure out how to function without the species they had taken for granted. His communication console chimed. It was a private message from Kixta. Ambassador Foster, I watched you leave. I understand why. The Valthine have long disagreed with how the Draviks treat others. Please know that you have friends still, even outside the Council. If you ever need allies, call for us. Ryan smiled sadly. He typed a brief response. Thank you, Kixta. The Valthine have always been honorable. Take care of yourself. Another message came in, this time from the Karathi representative. Your departure is noted and respected. The Karathi understand the value of walking away from that which harms you. May your path be bright. So not everyone on the Council was blind. Some had seen, some had understood. But not enough to change the system. Kate announced they would arrive at Earth in 6 hours. Ryan looked at his team. Jake was staring out the viewport, his expression distant. Lisa was already working on something new, her fingers flying across a holographic keyboard. Emma was checking on her fleet, making sure all 47 ships made it home safely. Ben was writing a report for President Wright. They were going home. Not in defeat, not in anger, in dignity. Behind them, Unity Prime struggled with systems that no longer worked properly. The Council met in emergency session, trying to understand what had happened. How could an entire species just leave? How could they walk away without warning? They didn't understand. That was the problem. They had never understood. Humanity had learned an important lesson. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. No fights, no arguments, no attempts to change minds that don't want to change. Just a quiet exit, leaving those who didn't appreciate you to figure things out on their own. The transport jumped to faster-than-light speed, and Unity Prime disappeared completely from the sensors. Good riddance, Ryan thought. Then he corrected himself. Not good riddance, just goodbye. They had tried. It hadn't worked. That was all. Now humanity would find its own way. The first month after humanity's departure was chaos. Unity Prime's defensive grid remained offline for 3 weeks. During that time, pirates attacked 5 Council colonies in the Outer Rim. The Council fleet responded, but without the human-designed early warning systems, they arrived too late. 400 civilians died. The communication network crashed repeatedly. Species that had relied on instant translation suddenly found themselves unable to understand each other. Important diplomatic messages were lost or delayed. Trade agreements fell apart because no one could verify the terms quickly. The medical bay on Unity Prime lost access to the human database of treatments. When a Valthine worker fell ill with a rare condition, the doctors couldn't access the cure that Dr. Lisa Chen had developed 3 years earlier. The worker died. He was the first, but not the last. Counselor Zexthor called an emergency session. He stood at the center podium, his scales darker than usual, and addressed the Council. The human departure is a minor inconvenience, he declared. We functioned before they arrived. We will function after they left. We simply need time to adjust. But the adjustment wasn't simple. Human traders had carried 70% of all civilian cargo in Council space. Without them, goods stopped moving. Colonies ran short on food. Medical supplies sat in warehouses because there weren't enough ships to deliver them. The Karathi announced they were suspending their Council membership to evaluate their options. 2 days later, they signed a trade agreement directly with Earth. The Valthine followed a week after that. Kixta stood before the Council and made a brief statement. The Valthene joined this council believing in cooperation and mutual respect. We have watched our human friends be exploited and mocked. We can no longer support an institution that treats its members this way. We are leaving. 5 more species withdrew over the next 2 months. The Galactic Council, which had stood for 300 years, was falling apart. In the 3rd month, a junior Dravix analyst named Sorkon discovered something in the archives. He brought his findings to the new council leadership, which had replaced Zexathor after his policies led to disaster. I reviewed all human contributions over 37 years, Sorkon reported. The numbers are shocking. Humans provided 63% of all new technology. They developed 78% of medical advances. They participated in 91% of military operations, usually with the highest casualty rates. And in return, we paid them less than 15% of council research grants. The new chairwoman, a moderate named Salvara, reviewed the data herself. She read the communication logs from the Raider campaign. She saw how Dravix fleet commanders had deliberately abandoned human forces. She reviewed the patent filings and saw human research stolen and relabeled. We treated them terribly, Salvara said to her council of advisors. We took everything they gave us and offered nothing but contempt in return. No wonder they left. What do we do? One advisor asked. We apologize, Salvara said, publicly and sincerely, and we invite them to return. Meanwhile, Earth was thriving. The 47 ships that had been stationed in council space were retrofitted and reassigned to explore new regions. Human scientists, no longer obligated to share their research immediately, made breakthrough after breakthrough. Dr. Lisa Chen developed a new form of faster-than-light travel that was 30% more efficient than the Council's version. Commander Jake Morrison trained a new generation of officers at the military academy. He taught them about Unity Prime, about what happens when you give too much and receive too little. Never fight for people who don't respect you, he told his students. Loyalty must be earned, not demanded. Captain Emma Rodriguez led the first human deep space exploration fleet. They discovered 14 new habitable worlds in the first 6 months. Human colonies expanded rapidly, no longer limited by council regulations. Ambassador Ryan Foster became Secretary of Interstellar Relations. His job was to manage Earth's relationships with individual species outside the council framework. He met with the Valthene and Korathi to negotiate the new Free Worlds Coalition, an alliance built on genuine partnership. No species pays more than another, Ryan explained at the first coalition meeting. No one contributes more blood than anyone else. We're equals or we're nothing. The coalition grew. 10 species joined in the first year. They appreciated the human model, fairness, transparency, and mutual respect. Everything the Council had failed to provide. 1 year after humanity's departure, a Council delegation arrived at Earth. Chairwoman Salvara led the group, and she brought representatives from 8 remaining Council species. They were allowed to land, and President Nicole Wright met them in a formal diplomatic setting. Ryan Foster stood beside the president. He watched Salvara approach with a carefully neutral expression. "Madam President," Salvara said, "Secretary Foster, thank you for agreeing to meet with us." President Wright nodded politely. "We're always willing to engage in diplomacy, Chairwoman." Salvara took a breath. "I come to offer an apology on behalf of the Galactic Council. We have reviewed our relationship with humanity over the past 37 years, and we have found it deeply troubling. You were exploited. Your contributions were stolen. Your sacrifices were mocked. This was wrong, and I am truly sorry." Ryan watched her carefully. The apology seemed genuine, but words were easy. "We understand," Salvara continued, "that we failed you. We allowed arrogance and prejudice to blind us to the value of our partnership. The former leadership, particularly Councillor Zexthor, has been removed from power. We have implemented reforms. We have restructured our payment systems to be fair. We have created oversight committees to prevent theft of intellectual property. She paused. We would like to invite humanity to return to the council. President Wright glanced at Ryan. He gave a slight shake of his head. Chairwoman, President Wright said, we appreciate your apology. It takes courage to admit mistakes. However, Earth will not be returning to the Galactic Council. Salvara looked stricken. But we've made changes, real changes. Ryan spoke for the first time. Changes made after we left, changes made because you had no choice. You didn't reform because you believed it was right. You reformed because you couldn't function without us. That's not entirely fair, one of the other representatives protested. Isn't it? Ryan asked. For 37 years, we contributed more than anyone else and received less. We raised concerns repeatedly. We showed evidence of exploitation. Nothing changed until we walked away. That tells us everything we need to know about the Council's priorities. Salvara tried again. What if we offered reparations? We could return all the stolen research. We could compensate Earth for the unfair payment burdens. President Wright considered this. We would accept reparations as a gesture of good faith, but we still won't return to the Council. Why not? Salvara asked, and she sounded genuinely confused. Ryan decided to be honest. Because we don't need you. We've discovered that humanity functions better on its own. We've formed the Free Worlds Coalition with species that share our values. We're exploring new territories. We're advancing our technology faster than ever before. The Council held us back, and we didn't even realize it until we left. He softened his voice slightly. We don't hate you, Chairwoman. We're not angry. We're just done. We gave you decades of loyalty and received exploitation in return. We won't make that mistake again. Salvara looked at her delegation, then back at Ryan and the president. What if we asked to join your coalition instead? What if the council dissolved and we started over with your model? President Wright and Ryan exchanged glances. That was unexpected. We would consider applications from individual species, President Wright said carefully, but not from the council as a whole. Your institution has too much baggage, too much history of inequality. If individual species want to apply to the Free Worlds Coalition, they can do so through normal diplomatic channels. They'll be evaluated like everyone else. It was a diplomatic way of saying the Galactic Council was finished. Some species could join the new alliance, but only if they abandoned the old hierarchy. The delegation stayed on Earth for 3 more days. They met with various officials. They toured human facilities. They saw the energy and optimism of a civilization that had freed itself from an exploitative relationship. On the final day, Salvara met privately with Ryan. I understand your decision, she said quietly. If I'm honest, I would have made the same choice. The Council failed you. Some species, like mine, are realizing that too late. Ryan nodded. You personally seem like a good leader. If your species applies to the coalition individually, I think you'd have a strong chance. Perhaps we will, Salvara said. The old council is dying. It may be time to build something new. The delegation departed. 3 months later, the Galactic Council officially dissolved. 8 species applied to join the Free Worlds Coalition. 5 were accepted after thorough vetting. 3 were asked to reapply in 2 years after demonstrating reforms. The Dravix Empire did not apply. They retreated to their core systems, bitter and diminished. Former Councilor Zexthor gave one final speech before disappearing from public life. Humanity will regret their arrogance, he declared. They think they can survive alone. They will fail. But humanity didn't fail. 3 years after walking away from Unity Prime, Earth stood at the center of an alliance of 23 species, all committed to fairness and mutual respect. The Free Worlds Coalition became stronger than the old council had ever been, precisely because it treated everyone equally. Ryan Foster stood in his office one evening, looking at a photograph from his first day at Unity Prime 10 years earlier. He had been so young then, so hopeful. He had believed that joining the council was humanity's greatest achievement. Now he knew better. Walking away had been the greatest achievement. It had required courage, dignity, and faith in humanity's own worth. They had chosen self-respect over membership in a club that didn't value them. His assistant buzzed him. "Sir, the Valthene ambassador is here for your meeting." Ryan smiled. Kixta had become a dear friend. She and Ryan were planning a joint exploration mission to a newly discovered star cluster. "Send her in," Ryan said. The door opened, and Kixta clicked her mandibles in greeting. "Secretary Foster, are you ready to discuss our expedition?" "Always," Ryan said. They sat down to plan the future, not a future controlled by the council. Not a future where humans had to prove their worth constantly. Just a future where different species worked together as genuine equals. It was everything Ryan had wanted from the council, but it had taken walking away to find it. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is simply leaving. No fights, no arguments, just quiet dignity and the knowledge that you deserve better. And Earth had found better.